Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey.
So we have reached the end of the road, kids, the long and winding road that leads us to the end of the Beatles Anthology. It took us a minute to get here, but now that we're here, we're going to cover it. We're going to talk about all the stuff, all the rough stuff, all the Yoko stuff, all the split stuff. Yeah, it's all here. We'll try not to make it too much of a downer for you, but let me just tell you, in all fairness, when I watched part 7 and 8 back today in preparation for this, and watched part 9 as well, I couldn't help but be a little sad because the first 6 parts were so great, and they're all getting along, and everything's wonderful. And I pointed out several times during the course of those first episodes, everybody got along until they didn't. And when they didn't, it got bad. And we got, some references here. We didn't get the full knockdown, drag out fights that happened in court that kept these guys tied up in litigation for years. It was mentioned and then moved on very quickly. But George was showing signs of it, kids, in 95, that he still was upset. But we'll get there when we get there. But yes, we are chronicling the end of the band as told in the Beatles Anthology Part 7 and 8. And yes, we will also discuss Part 9 here today. We're going to cram a whole lot into this tiny little episode, so everybody grab on to something and hold on tight. But before we get started, for the last time for this particular series of episodes, let's do this. The Beatles Anthology is a multimedia documentary project released in 1995, 1996, created by the surviving Beatles and Apple Corps as the official definitive history of the band. In 2025, the anthology celebrated its 30th anniversary. The original product included an 8-part TV documentary, 3 double CD sets featuring rare and previously unreleased recordings, and a massive companion book. Documentary covers the band's origins, early years in Liverpool and Hamburg, and rise to global fame. Part 7 picks up around June of 1967, right after the release of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And that is your lowdown, at least for Part 7 of the Beatles Anthology. Phil, as we're kicking this off here today, watching 7 and 8, did you get any sort of melancholy from watching this? Did you take it in stride? Like you knew it was coming. You knew the end was coming. Were you prepared for it? What was your headspace when you watched these episodes?
Well, we've both watched a ton of material on this band. We've seen some of the stuff that they clearly did not put in this documentary for reasons. So you could fill some of the gaps in places where they didn't want to talk about certain things, obviously. I think the only part it started to get like that was really into episode 9. I think at this point the stuff from 7 and 8 has been discussed enough and has been analyzed enough that a lot of it wasn't totally new information. There was some stuff that I guess I didn't know, but the surface level stuff we already kind of know. We already knew a lot of stuff that led to the breakup, and at this point the breakup of the Beatles has been discussed so much. What happened? Was it just Yoko? Was it this or was it that? I will say coming out of episode 7, I did wonder again how much of this stuff might not have gotten as bad if Brian didn't pass away.
And it's in my notes. It's a major event for these guys. And I thought the same thing. And I've thought the same thing for years, that this band creatively would not, in my opinion, would not have gone the direction they went. And I believe they had another 5 years together. I honestly believe that, had Brian not died. And I could be wrong, Phil. I don't know. It never felt, Phil, to me like their solo careers were beckoning to the point that had Brian been there and still been the sort of the anchor for them as a group, like, would their need to go solo have been as strong as it was if he were still there?
Um, well, for George maybe. Um,
Yeah.
but the part where I wonder with Ryan, like, the creation of Apple and some of the business side stuff that started going south. I don't think it would have happened as quickly if Brian was still around.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that. And it's coming up, kids. As you know, like we just said, folks, we are beginning with part 7. We're kicking off episode 7 of the anthology with the Summer of Love, kids.
Hmm.
And I wasn't alive during the 60s, but I've seen my fair share of footage. And I tell you, man, as a younger man, I would watch this footage and go, "Pff," you know, they're potheads, they're this, that, and the other, which sounds like something an old man would say. But in my 20s, I thought this. But man, considering where we are in the world, and what we're going through in this nation, what other countries are going through with their governments and whatnot. You see the video of these kids dancing around and just enjoying each other's company and not, they're protesting Vietnam, and Ringo talked about putting the flower in the gun barrel. Man, and I'm not trying to get political here on you, but there's something to be said for the younger people, like for the counterculture to rise up and say, we're not doing this, we're not having this. There's a better way. We don't want war. This is not who we are as a people, and that's not what we want for our future. It was kind of cool to see all that played back, and I don't expect it to hit me the way it hit me. If I could be honest with you, it hit me very differently this time around.
Yeah, just different times. I think when you come from episode 6, and episode 6 ends with them doing the satellite special,
Mhm.
and they played a little bit of it to start this episode, and yeah, you see just how positive people were at that time period, and how, positively people spoke about, peace and love and trying to understand one another, and, trying to stand up to, the tyranny of corporations and fascism. And now we live in a world where people are openly accepting some of these things.
Yeah.
It's quite sad, man. It really is.
It's jarring, isn't it? It's jarring. Like, dude, if you'd been in a coma for the past 6 months and woke up, you'd be like, "What happened? Like,
Yeah.
what happened to the country, man?" Oh my god, unreal. Uh, by the way, kids, we get our first look at the Maharishi here. He's a very infamous figure in Beatle lore. We go back to him twice. The first time we see him here, they've all got nice things to say. He turns them on to transcendental meditation. They're not in India just yet. I don't think they're in India just yet. But it's they're all putting him over pretty well, and at that point in time, I don't believe that he had done anything wrong that anyone was aware of. Let's just put it that way. I take it back. They do. I think they do visit him at this time. Maybe they're in India.
Yeah, initially, when they talk about it, they talk about how George went, and he got interested in going to see the Maharishi talk, and then he got tickets for the rest of the guys in case they wanted to go,
Hmm.
and then they ended up doing you know more intensive, like, retreats and stuff with him.
Have you ever tried any sort of meditation as a side item here?
Meditation is very beneficial. I
Mm,
think, of course, it depends on what you're trying to get out of it.
mhm.
But I think meditation can be incredibly beneficial.
I've never tried transcendental meditation, but I've always wanted to. I'm not sure if it just means finding a good YouTube video and trying it out, or if it means a book. I'm not real sure, but it's something I've
Eh,
always wanted to try, man.
I mean, of course, there's like a range to it. Like, I've never got into like what they're talking about, like mantras and like
Mhm.
transcendental meditation, but just like controlled breathing and just like uh just meditation that could, help with like your sleep and like just being more at ease and less stressed. That stuff is very helpful.
Mm. Yeah, I'm open to it. I don't think I'm open to what the Maharishi was doing, but we'll get to
Yeah.
that in a bit. But I'm definitely open to the meditation part of this for sure. Speaking of jarring, Phil, we go from meeting the Maharishi to going directly to the death of Brian Epstein. I mean, this is very quick in episode 7. This is 8 minutes in.
Yeah.
Brian Epstein dead at the age of 32. Phil, talk about how they shoved cameras in John's face, and John has this look like he just saw a ghost, like he's ready to pass out. He's in legit shock because he just literally just found out that Brian was dead. And the press, how they're just all over these guys wanting to know what they're thinking about it.
Yeah, I think there's unspoken things said here. Um,
Hmm.
I think it's very interesting in episode 9 how Paul says multiple times that they sought out to tell the definitive Beatles story. And by the end, he's just like, I don't know that you can because there's so many perspectives. And that came across in episode 7 and 8 very well because there's so many things happening. And I think if you read between the lines, like the truth is probably in the middle somewhere.
Mm.
Um, and I don't think that it was unintentional to go from the meeting the Maharishi to Brian passing away, and you see just how much the influences on this band are changing, like outside influences.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, they're definitely changing. I mean, based on what you know, we were just talking about how Brian was the anchor here, Phil. Based on what you know about this guy and his relationship to the band, what do you think he gave them? Did he give them structure? Did he give them professionalism? Was it a camaraderie? Was it everything? What do you think it was that he meant for them as a unit?
I think that he gave them structure. I mean, you of course had other figures in there like George Martin who produced, and Neil who was a big part of putting the anthology together. But
Mm.
Brian was one of those guys that was there from the very early days, and that's why I'm saying I don't know if the story of the Beatles is the same if he was still there up to the end. Um, yeah, it's hard to imagine it would have went the same way. But you also have just like, that juxtaposition of the beginning of the episode, and they're really showing like this age of love and, freedom expression, and everybody's like experimenting with drugs and all these other things. And then, you know, the cause of Brian's death and just how jarring that is.
Yeah, and we have to mention here, kids, that Brian was in the closet, and I don't think it was a very closely guarded secret. I think everyone in the band kind of knew, but in that time in the '60s, it wasn't. It probably wasn't the safest thing for a man to be out of the closet, and during that time, and I know that if I'm getting my facts right, hopefully I am. I think that he went through some physical stuff. I'm sure he got beat up more than one time in his life because people found out, and again, it wasn't a good thing for him to be out and about. And I think maybe Phil, there was a certain level of shame, not from him, but brought on by society that he couldn't just live his life out in the open. I mean, Phil, had the Beatles come along now, this is a very different, perhaps a
Yeah.
very different end to his story.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. You have this idea of freedom expression, of freedom love, and at the same time, this was still the '60s. Some things were still very restrictive. It was freedom for some people.
Mm.
And so, yeah, going from the beginning of the episode, and then, like you said, not even 8 minutes in, we're talking about the deaths of Brian Epstein. Uh, yeah, it is very jarring. And I mean, we did have that quote. I think it was from George, and boy, George is great. Every time he has, he, he he's such a positive figure in some ways, but he's so matter of factly and so cynical in other ways, and it's
He
so
very
funny.
much is. Yeah.
It's so funny, because he's just like, yeah. What I think when we were in the midst of it, and this idea of like, yeah, this is the age of love, and then when you really poke a hole in it, it's like, oh, this isn't really what everyone's saying it is. It's not. Yeah, it's like when he was talking about Magic Alex, and he's just like, he
God.
didn't do anything. It's so
What a
funny.
joke, man.
It's like
What
he
a
didn't
joke
do
that guy
anything.
was.
Nobody else was saying, but George is just like, but wait a minute, that guy didn't do anything.
Yeah, he was John liked him. We'll get there when we get there, but John liked Magic Alex, and that's why
Yeah,
Magic Alex was attached to the band. So yeah, I think he was just one of those shysters, those hangers on
yeah,
that kind of, you know what I mean? Just kind of glommed onto the band and really didn't provide any value to them. Really didn't give them anything in return, but just
yeah.
kind of got famous along with them.
And of course, because it's John and it's after the fact, John's not here, and they want to paint John in a mostly positive light. They won't talk about like how John was struggling with drugs and stuff by that time as well, and
True.
so some of the people around him. So yeah,
Yeah. Folks, he wasn't the only one to
no,
be. John and Yoko themselves, long after the Beatles split up, heading into John's death in 1980, there was several different characters that glommed onto them as well. And this different podcast for a different time, but yeah,
yeah,
different people trying to get their hands into them. Speaking of things going from one to the next, Phil, we don't really get a whole lot of time to really grieve for Brian here.
yeah.
We got the Hide Your Love Away, which I thought was a nice little montage of showing clips of Brian and stuff. That was well done. But we go directly from that to Magical Mystery Tour. And it's a very different thing for this band, kids. It's a TV project. I mean, Paul largely directed this because I don't think there was really anybody else that was going to do it, I believe.
Hmm.
How much of this era are you into? Because there's so much stuff from this era that I love. Like I'm the Walrus is one of my all-time favorite Beatles songs. What did you think about the Magical Mystery Tour a bit? And have you seen the actual film?
I've never seen the film, but there's a ton of music from that time period that I do like. Um, it's very weird, very British. Even the
Yes.
idea behind it is like, oh, a bunch of we all just take a bus down here and like we get drunk and go down here and it's like, yeah, that's very British. And even when the stuff they were filming on the bus and doing that, I was like, yeah, this is very British, very niche. Um
Right?
and I think some of the humor from that time period people might not get it, but I like a lot of the music from that time period. Like I'm a Walrus is a great record. What else is on that album? Of
Oh
course, Full
man.
on the Hill is on that album.
Full in the Hill. They showed the clip of that. It was just Paul and some of his mates going out and recording that bit. Hello, Goodbye's on there. Blue Jay Way. Yeah, some great stuff, man. The actual
Yeah,
song, Magical Mystery Tour is a good song too.
yeah. Hello, Goodbye is on there. I believe
Mhm.
that's where All You Need Is Love ended up landing, right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah,
Because it was not on Pepper.
yeah. Of course, song that has probably been covered to death at this point. Baby, You're a Rich Man is also on there.
God. Sidebar, not for nothing. I don't know why this just jumped in my head. I'm watching VH1, maybe in the early 2000s, or maybe it's around this time, and they're doing a Beatles countdown. And this, I don't know if they call them VJs on VH1 or not, like they did on TV. She's giving it her all, but she introduces the video as "Baby, I'm a Rich Man," and I'm thinking she got a big smile on her face. And I'm thinking, did no one tell you the name of the song? Like you obviously don't know the name of it. It's okay that you don't know it, I guess, but you didn't.
Yeah,
Did you read the cue card wrong? What happened?
yeah. Yeah, I just immediately think there's a cover of Baby You're a Rich Man that is playing during the closing credits of social media.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I love this era, and I haven't seen the movie in a very very long time. It is out there, and I think I can't say Paul made up the Spielberg stuff because I don't know.
Paul
What'd you think about that?
Paul is hilarious because he'll always drop some kind of factoid like that or something like that. Everybody else just like, oh yeah, they hated it. Like when you like George and Ringo talking about it, they're like, yeah, they hated it. All of the newspapers they hated it. They couldn't wait to find a reason to try to knock us down a peg and yeah, they hated it. Like I also think that they're right in a sense that some people just didn't get it. Like trying to make it like this black and white film and put it on TV, it just didn't work. But yeah, Paul immediately going, yeah, Spielberg has told me that art students actually did watch this in film school, and it's like, okay, where'd you hear that, Paul?
Yeah, come on, Paul. Who are you fooling?
And he could
Yeah.
be telling the truth. It's just it's just so funny that he's the guy saying that, and everybody else is just like, yeah, nah, people hated it.
John shoveling spaghetti onto the table is one of the funniest things I've ever seen to this day. It's so bizarre, but I'm so here for it.
Yeah, again, George being George, I love that George is like that was the best part of the entire movie. Um, but it's so weird, but it's that weird like British humor. Um, and I think if it's for you and you get it, Yeah, of course, but I've never seen the entire movie, so I don't really have a frame of reference.
Yeah, I mean, Mal Evans sitting there with his shirt off, eating as if it's normal. There's a girl in a bikini. I mean, it's such an odd thing. It's like I can't call this Python, but it's very Python adjacent, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest. So,
Yes.
yeah, I'm here for that, man. I like the stuff. And to your point, BBC put it on and because it's BBC at the time, it's black and white. They're not
Mhm.
color at that time. So you put this movie on with all its colors and it's in black and white. And Ringo, the quote he gave has stuck with me for years where he's talking about, hey, this really gave everybody a chance to say, oh, we told you. We
Mhm.
told you these guys, they're not who they say they are. And they look, they failed. Look what happened. I'm like, he's not wrong because everyone was just waiting for this band to fall, dude. I think people were hoping this band was going to fail at some point.
Yes.
But we do get that live performance, or get performance, I should say, of "On the Walrus," excuse me, which again is a freaking great, great song. One of those many songs that people have tried to dissect the lyrics over the years, Phil. And as we know, because we've covered the Beatles here more than one time on this podcast, the lyrics mean nothing. John flat out said they don't mean anything. Everyone's taking more meaning of it than there is, which is kind of how this band always operated.
Yeah.
So we go from this, we're back to India now, kids. This is where the group actually makes the trek to India. And this is essentially where the sessions, I won't say sessions, but where songs for the White Album, they start getting written here. Phil, they did leave some stuff out here back in the USSR. The story that was always kind of told was that Mike Love from the Beach Boys was there during the journey to Rishikesh, and that he and Paul wrote this song together or that they were collaborating. And then another story says that this was Paul's way of saying, we can write a Beach Boys song better than the Beach Boys can. I don't know which one I believe, but they come away from India with some great material here, dude, for the White Album.
Yeah. Very interesting that they did not get into any of the controversy around the Maharishi.
No.
Of course, they didn't get into the concept behind Sexy Sadie. Uh, very interesting. But we did get stuff like, them initially getting there and the benefits of working with Maharishi and learning about transcendental meditation. That clip where Maharishi's getting in that small helicopter
Yep.
and he's just like, anybody want to ride with me? And John's like, ooh, me. And
So
later,
good.
Paul's like, John, why did you want to get in this helicopter with him so bad? He's like, I just thought he'd tell me the secret.
Yeah. I love that story, man. Yeah. And Paul pointed out that's very John. That's something only John would do for sure. I mean, again, Phil, like I know the end's coming, but it kind of feels like everybody's fairly still okay at the moment. Everybody's, they're kind of tolerating each other and,
Yes.
nothing major has happened yet. And like you said, they did gloss over what happened with the Maharishi here, for sure.
Yes.
I love that John quote, Phil, where they say, is he on the level? And he goes, well, I don't know what level he's on. That's great.
Yeah, but I mean, I think, like I said earlier, you can see more of the outside influences on these bands, but you can
Mm.
see more of the outside influences on these guys individually too, because even the idea to go to India and interest in Indian music and interest in like Indian culture,
Mhm.
that was really George, and George was very much in on that stuff. And in the same way that you could see the influences of like Yoko eventually. And then not in a negative way, but these are guys that spent so much time with each other
Mhm.
as teenagers and growing up, and now they're like meeting like their wives and people that they want to spend the rest of their lives with. And so, things just have to change inevitably.
Yeah, well, there's and we're not there yet, but there's that point where George Martin says, this band had started prioritizing being with, their wives versus being with their partner, which is something that normal people do,
Yeah.
which is, that's kind of what led to the end, but I don't think we get there till part 8. Do you buy that, by the way? I'm sure it has something to do with it, but I think there's a lot more going on than just that.
Yes, in some ways I do, because I do think um John meeting Yoko had a definite effect on the band. It's really downplayed in episode 8.
Hmm.
They talk about it, but it did have an effect on the morale around the band. And I don't think, again, it's not a negative way. I do think Paul meeting Linda had an effect on him as well,
Hmm.
because it just has to when you meet somebody and you decide like this is like the big love of my life. And I do believe that Linda was like the big love for Paul, because just based on everything we knew about him up to that point and after the fact and how much they collaborated, she was a big part of his life, as she should have been.
Mm.
And inevitably, when you make somebody by choice a part of your life, you're going to change as a person. And these guys just all started changing and maturing, and they wanted different things.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, rest in peace to Linda, but the fact that he had her on the albums and she really had no musical ability, if we're being honest. I think she learned some keyboards and stuff, and maybe she could play a little, but she was by no means a vocalist. But like Phil, had things been a little bit different, there's a possibility she could have been the Yoko of this band. I mean, it always felt like that Paul didn't have her there all the time, or that she maybe didn't want to be there all the time. But had things been different, what is it about John, do you think, Phil, that had the Yoko thing where Paul didn't have the Linda thing in the studio?
I think his relationship with Yoko after his first marriage is a big part of it, and just how much he dove in feet first with Yoko, and it was just kind of like all or nothing with her.
Mhm.
And I just don't think that Paul and Linda had the same relationship, at least straight away. I think that there's really an unwritten rule that, like, yeah, our rehearsals and our creative process is for the four of us. Like, yeah, we have other people that will collaborate, like George, and we'll have other people that might have like a say so here and there, but this is really our thing. And once John broke the sanctity of that by bringing Yoko in, it changed their dynamic. And again, I know that they like downplayed it in episode 8, but it absolutely changed their dynamic. There's no getting around it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what's your opinion on that? And this isn't a male female thing. I'm not trying to get into that conversation. But if it's the band, should it just be the band and not best friends and not spouses? I mean, do you have an opinion on that? Do you think it depends on who can handle it and who can't? And
Yeah.
I guess maybe it just depends on who it is, I guess.
I think if we had an agreement, right? Like if
Mhm.
we all decided like this is our thing, I don't think that's a boys club thing, because I know it could sound that way, like, oh, no women allowed in here. I don't think that that's what it was. I think that this is our band, and in order to have like a conducive, creative thing, we don't want distractions.
Mhm.
And once John changed that, and it's just like, well, why are you allowed to change that and nobody else can?
Yeah.
That really changed, like I said, the dynamic, and I could see the frustration there. And look at it this way: if you're like George, for example, and you're George that has had a hard time penetrating the writing group of these two guys, and then he just brings this woman in that I don't know anything about. Why is she here? Just because you
Right.
want her here?
Yes.
Like I get the frustration there, and even Paul, like, and Paul's like, no, we're a team. Like this is our thing. Why is she here? Like, and I don't think it's a hey, I don't like Yoko. It's just a hey, this is a band. This is our thing. Why is she here?
Mm.
Um, and I don't even think John looked at it as a negative way. His explanation to Ringo of why they were inseparable, it made sense. He was just kind of like, hey, we're in love. I want to do everything with her. Why wouldn't I want to do everything with her? And it's like, yeah, but also this is a job thing. And I think that that's also part of what started to split them up is that, hey, we really started this thing as a way you know, to play music. We all love to play. And
Mhm.
we really started this band to play. And then it became a job and then a business. And it became a business that was bigger than the band, and it got annoying.
Yeah, it did. God, it did. And she's in every clip. She's in every clip at that point.
Well, I
Like,
mean, not even just the Yoko stuff. I just think the business of the Beatles, I think it got frustrating to a guy like John, who's just
mm,
like, I didn't really sign up for all of this. Like, yeah, the business needs to be here to sustain this thing. But like now it's just like, and you could see it in the earlier episodes when he was kind of the first one to be done with touring and like all of the song and dance and all of the dog and pony shows, and you got to make appearances here. You got to, all of this stuff is like, I just think he and George and some of the others just got tired of it. I think Paul was probably the last one that got tired of the business side of it, but
mhm.
I just think it just became too restrictive on them.
Yeah, I agree with that. George has that great quote where he's like, "At the end of the day, we couldn't do anything except write, record, and be Beatles. That's all we know how to do." And it's funny because we do go from India. By the way, kids, we can't discount the White Album. Please go back to the archives. We did
Great
cover the
album.
White Album. Phil and I did. Very fun episode. I think it was a two-parter, I believe. And Dear Prudence, Julia, Blackbird, Mother Nature's Son, Sexy Sadie, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, Your Blues, recorded in a small, cramped room in Apple Studios, by the way, and you can so tell from the sound of the tune. Happiness is a
Yeah.
Warm Gun. All that is there on that episode, those episodes. So please go check it out.
I don't think I knew that story that Paul told when they were playing the footage for "Hey Jude," which is an all-time great Beatles song.
All time.
Um, I don't think I knew that he meant it as a song to Julian, and that it was initially titled "Hey Jules."
Yeah, that's been out for a while. And here's something else they didn't talk about in the episode there, Phil, because this is episode 8 we're talking about now. They didn't bother mentioning that John thought that Paul wrote that song for him to sing.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they had a thing over it backstage, but John was
Well,
kind of surprised that he didn't give it to him.
well, when you really think about the idea of the song of him
Hmm.
trying to comfort his son with his first wife and tell him everything's going to be okay while he's in the midst of moving on in a new relationship, and
Hmm.
this is you singing this song to my son, not me,
Hmm.
that does come off away.
Well, maybe you could have wrote the song and sung it to him yourself,
Yeah, but it does come
right?
off away. And I could see where John might have been like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean by all of this? And I know he
Mhm.
tried to put it in a way where it was wordy. That's why I changed it to Jude. Is that the only reason? It might have been a little controversial for you to come out singing that song, "Hey Jules."
Yeah, I've always loved the story because it shows that, how tight they were. They were brothers, man. Like for all the court battles and all the swipes they took at each other later, these four guys were brothers. And I think it's easy to forget, Phil, that these guys were an honest to God family
Hmm.
during their time together, man. They really were.
Yeah, and of course, I'm not saying this in a way that like Paul meant it in a malicious way. I
Sure.
think that he legitimately cared about Julian. I just think it could come off away publicly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So after India, we get a real quick clip of them on the grass, the three of them hanging out. George is playing ukulele, which I kind of really love. That moment seems okay, but we have moments later where George is just not, he's not in the moment. He's so not in the moment. And we got bits of that in the other episodes where it's like, yeah, I don't think George wants to be here doing this with Paul in the same room or outside or whatever you want to call it. But we get that and we go to the formation of Apple.
Yeah.
And, John has that great, thing with the press when he's talking about, we want to make it to where people don't have to get on their hands and knees, go begging to their office, probably yours, to get some help. And Neil Aspinall talks about how they put out the flyer in the paper and really didn't get any hits off of it. But Phil, they did mention different acts that came along after the fact, like James Taylor, Badfinger, Jackie Lomax, Mary Hopkins. All these acts come around, I guess, indirectly as a result of Apple Records becoming a thing. I thought that was very cool. I think Badfinger is a very underrated band, Phil. If you've never checked them out, they're worth
Yeah.
your time. Very
Yeah.
good band.
I thought that little montage was cool, and we've seen multiple big stars start a label. And
Mhm.
so this is a tale as old as time. of, yeah, in theory, it sounds good, give some other artists some exposures, but the business of running a label is quite different than being a successful musical act.
Mm. Hmm.
And, what worked for you and what helped you become successful doesn't always work for everybody else. And as a current act that is still very popular, you're not going to always have the time to devote to these things.
Very true. It's a star NBA player becoming a head coach, isn't it?
Yeah, it just yeah, it
Right?
just doesn't always work, man.
Yeah, like a
Um,
player coach combo. It just doesn't.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The George stuff you're talking about is interesting because I assume you're talking about the stuff that they filmed in the '90s when they did their reunion stuff.
Yeah, there's moments where it's okay.
Mhm.
Episode 9, it's not a whole lot in episode 9. There's a couple of different moments, but I think it's mostly in the other episodes where he kind of side eyes the camera a little bit, and you're like,
Yeah.
God, does he even want to be here doing this?
My takeaway is all of this stuff is exactly what he grew to hate by the
Yeah.
time that the group broke up. It's not I don't like being around these guys. It's not that I don't love being a Beatle. I hate that all of our moments there's a camera in our face. I
That's
hate that
fair.
everything needs to be recorded and nothing feels organic. Everything feels put on for a show. And I don't feel like everything needs to be a show. And he talks about that. He talked about that in the filming for Let It Be. Um, and I don't think I've ever heard that quote when he was talking about the argument with him and Paul, because he basically makes it seem like, well, he doesn't say it, but he makes it seem like we've had arguments before, but the difference was there was a camera there this time. And so
Yeah.
it seemed like it was worse than it actually was. And when you rewatch it, it's horrible because this is my friend and we're having a private moment in front of a camera.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we'll get there and we get there, but everything got amplified because that entire experience at Twickenham Studios appeared to be horrible. It just
Yeah.
appeared to be horrible. And then you see the get back sessions, and you're like, that's not what happened at all. It's the way
Yeah.
it was cut, right?
Yeah. I think the initial filming was worse than it actually was.
I
I
agree.
do think that there was the tension there, obviously. Uh, but it's kind of like when you see a reality show, we're going to take the most interesting parts. And like, because we've never seen these guys talk to each other like that, they're going to leave that in.
Mhm. By the way, kids, we did cover Get Back. I told you we've done a lot of Beatles stuff on this show.
Yeah, that argument is always very hard to watch
It
because it's
is.
just like you can tell that it's Paul being Paul. Paul does
Mhm.
not realize what it is that he's doing that's agitating George, and George is just he's just trying to move on, and Paul's just like, well, what am I doing? I'm not trying to get at you. I'm not trying to get you. I just want to do it right, and it's just like, mm. uh,
Yeah. It's like, I'm just trying to help you. I hear myself talking. I feel like you're getting irritated and stuff. Look, kids, if we have not made this abundantly clear, let me clear this up for the record, so everybody knows. Paul McCartney is a genius. There's no two ways about it. I don't know if I'm gonna sit here and say he's the modern Mozart. I won't go too nuts with it, but he's a freaking genius. And the
agree.
stuff that he's produced through the years is epic, is legendary. Should all be locked up in a spacecraft and sent to other civilizations. That's how amazing this guy is. I mean that. But Phil, I think we've said it here on the show. In his head, he heard it a way, he saw it a certain way. And when other people didn't hear it and see it that way, his inclination was just, well, here, just let me get in here and play it myself, and then we'll get there. You know what I mean?
Yes. He had a lot of great ideas for this band.
Mhm.
And a lot of his ideas and execution, um, yeah, it was a great idea. I mean, even the idea for Let It Be and the idea of, in theory, when you hear the concept, it's like, oh, that is a good idea of like
Mhm.
recording the band, rehearsing all these songs, and then we get to the climax of the movie, and it's the big concert. All of that sounds good in theory, um, but in execution, it didn't really turn out the way he wanted, and that happened multiple times with him. I think like you said, he is a great producer, great musician, great performer, and a lot of times when you're this guy that like, okay, we're doing this thing, and I'm the guy coming up in and raising my hand with this great idea. I have more vested interest in making sure it works.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to harp on things because I want this to work. It's my idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes across poorly sometimes, for a lack of better words. And I don't think it's because, again, I don't think he's doing it in a malicious way or a way to be mean to the other guys. I just think that he has his way. Paul is, I'd have to look this up, but textbook Gemini. Um, textbook Gemini. And look, I googled the ear of the Gemini. I knew it. Textbook Gemini. He just has his way about him, and that's gonna rub some people the wrong way. And if you understand them, it's not. But I can see in watching all 9 episodes why he gets such a bad rep with some people, because some stuff he says and does doesn't come off great. And I don't think he means anything by it. I just think it's how he is.
I don't think he means a thing by it. I don't either that or he's an evil genius. He's an evil genius if he does. Because it doesn't seem he seems oblivious when he hurts someone's feelings. He seems oblivious that people are getting annoyed. He just has the goal in front of him, Phil. He knows what he wants to do. He knows they can get there because they've gotten there before. And when people kind of limp on the way there, he gets, well, come on, let's do this. And people kind of,
Yeah.
well, I want to be with her and I want to go over there and do this. He's like, guys, let's go.
Yeah. You could see it in what ends up like their motives for wanting to keep doing music and
Mhm.
just how different all of these guys are. Paul seems like the guy out of all 4 of these guys that wanted to be famous, that wanted to be a megastar.
Yes.
That's very apparent. I don't think that was ever that important to George or John. And then also when you see the business side and how once the business side started changing and Brian wasn't there, Paul immediately stepped up and was like, "Oh, sure, let's do this then." And you can look at it like Paul wanted to take initiative. I do believe that part of it, but I also just feel like Paul wanted to be in control in some ways.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that in a negative way. I just think that that's his personality.
I agree with that. Let me ask you this real quick, because this kind of just jumped to my head. We always talk about the powerhouse writing tandem of Lennon and McCartney with good reason. And, George got there, but it took a while for a lot of different reasons.
Mhm.
And then we always say, and then there's Ringo. I'll be honest with you. In my opinion, had John and Paul not had each other, I think Ringo still would have made it. He was already the best drummer in England at that time, arguably. He was the best drummer in Germany at that time. He was earning his chops. He was a veteran when they met him, and he was still a fairly young guy. I think Ringo would have landed with a band that would have, I'm not saying Ringo's other band would have conquered the world too. I
Yeah.
think Ringo would have been a working musician. He would have been happy. He would have probably had a level of fame. I mean, of the 4 of them, Phil, I kind of feel like he was the one that was maybe built for it because he loved playing as much as he did.
Yeah, I think that he often gets a bad rep as well as kind of the guy that was just there and he was just along for the ride. And he is extremely important to this band. I mean, we already know like a lot of the naming conventions for titles of songs and things and the cool factor he added to this band. Um, but also like when he tells the story about how he left and they all came and talked to him and he's just like well, he went to them one by one and talked to them and he's just like, yeah, I just feel like I don't fit here. And I mean, on the surface you could see why, like, oh, George is peaking creatively, these two guys are, and Paul and John write all of our songs, and they're in this place, creative space, and I just kind of feel like, okay, well, I'll play what you guys want, but how do I fit in here? And so I get why he started feeling that way, but then they're just kind of like, oh no, I thought it was the 3 of you guys. Like, I thought you guys were getting along great, and I was the odd man out, and they all told him the same thing, and it just shows you that they never felt that way about Ringo. I think that that's kind of like, this pop culture discourse of like Ringo was never a good drummer or he was just along for the ride. And I don't think that's the truth of the matter. I just think that people have just decided that for whatever reason.
People hate on musicians for weird reasons. I've said this before. I think I said it on this show, kids. Your favorite drummer, his favorite drummer is Ringo. Sorry. It's the truth. Like, and even if Ringo's not, he'll give Ringo props, or she. I guarantee that, because Ringo can do stuff and did stuff that no one else was doing at the time. Ringo, I won't say he intentionally did it, but there's plenty of clips you can look up. Kids, go do it, where there's a certain feel or there's a certain rhythm, and you can play it one way, which is the easy way, and Ringo played it and it was 3 times harder, and it was backwards, because that's the way he played. And I'm like, that's a guy that knows. He knows what the sound is. He knows what he wants to do. He's very good at it. Yeah, I'm not having that argument. People can go yell at the clouds if they want to, because I'm not having that argument. I love Ringo, man. Like, he's
Yeah, I think it's just such a great story when he tells that story about how he was like feeling left out, and everybody's just like, "Well, no, we love you, Ringo. Like, what do you mean?"
yeah,
Like, and of course, like George, the story of George bringing all the flowers and
it's
setting them
good.
up in the studio because he wanted them to know he appreciated them, which is
Yeah.
a very George thing to do because he loved flowers, and like he loved, from what it seems, in all the documentaries I've seen, George loved very like intimate things, like not, hey man, like just gestures for people to make them know, hey, I care about you.
Mm. I agree with that. Yeah, yeah.
Boink Studios YouTube is the home of Tom Clark's 6M podcast. Tom Clark's main event, Bear Mode, a podcast review of The Bear, and Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Subscribe to the channel for archives that date back to 2014, with new content being uploaded every week. And check out boinkstudios.com for links to every podcast platform, social media, special announcements, and a lot more. Bookmark the site today.
I think if you could be around anyone for any period of time, I think George would have been the guy you could be around. George and Ringo, I'll put it that way. I think Paul could be taxing, and I think John was such a. I kind of feel like if I were around John, I'd feel the need to try to keep up with him intellectually, and I don't think that's possible. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, George seemed very much the most down to earth, and
Yeah.
I think it's possibly because he was the youngest, and so I think he just said whatever he thought sometimes. And you can
Mhm.
see that throughout this anthology, where everybody else would be like try to be, as polite or politically correct as possible, and he's just like, well, no, what was this guy doing here? He did. That's why the Magic Alex thing is so funny, because he's just like, they didn't even do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and,
that's
and
fun.
some of the quotes of him talking about Yoko, which, funny enough, are not included anywhere in this documentary,
No.
but they're out there if you look them up on YouTube, people, where he's just like, yeah, and she just was here.
Yeah.
And none of us knew why she was here. She was here.
Yeah, it's messed up. Well, look, before we get to the Yoko stuff, kids, right before it, they do the Yellow Submarine stuff. They did not do the voices for that. They didn't do the voices for the Beatles cartoon. We spoke about Python earlier. Monty Python is very much into effect here in Yellow Submarine. I don't think they ever once mentioned that George was a huge part of the reason why Monty Python and the Holy Grail was made, because he helped fund the movie.
Yeah.
And he became friends with those guys. Such a great story, man. But
Yeah.
Yellow Submarine's a classic, Phil. Like, it's one of my favorite Beatles movies, man.
Yeah, they talked about his relationship with the Monty Python guys extensively in his documentary, the Scorsese documentary.
Nice.
That's how I knew that. Yellow Submarine is one of those movies. I think it's out of like their last few movies. I guess because it's a cartoon, it feels like it's like more talked about. Like it's like, especially in that time period with like the psychedelic look and just the look of the cartoon. Yellow Submarine is the main song as well. I feel like I see that movie talked about more than most of their movies.
That's fair. I think you're right, actually. I really think you're right. Because I think I won't say it has more appeal, but maybe it has more appeal because it's not black and white, and it's not
Yeah.
help where the outfits are dated. It's an animated thing that can, be shown in any time period. But Phil, we can't discount that soundtrack, man, because All Together Now is a great song. Hey Bulldog, which was my all-time favorite Beatles tunes ever, is on the Yellow Submarine soundtrack. That's a
Yeah.
great soundtrack, man.
Yeah, Hey Bulldog is great. I believe that's one of Dave Grohl's favorites. Dave Grohl did the cover for it.
Such a good song.
That's awesome. Yeah, Yellow Submarine is a great song. Probably one of Ringo's best songs where he gets to sing lead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is a great soundtrack. I love Ringo telling the story also of like, yeah, all these kids come up to me like, why did you press the button? Um,
Yeah.
but man, it's such a big part of what Ringo ended up doing after the band and just like his place in pop culture because of Thomas the Tank Engine and all these other things. And um, yeah, I really love that part of the anthology is that you can see the further you get in it, you can see where these guys will end up or where their lives are leading them outside of this group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that whenever John and Paul would write something for him, if it wasn't a Carl Perkins cover, it was a fun tune because they never gave Ringo anything that was insanely serious because that wasn't Ringo's vibe. So it was always like a fun tune. But I love Yellow Submarine. I think I was going to say it's an underrated song. Maybe it's not, but I love it. What we get next, kids, is the Yoko bit, which we talked about, and we'll circle back to it, I'm sure. But that happens next, and then we wrap up episode 7 with the White Album sessions, and everything seems to be maybe teetering on the edge of things are getting a little weird. John says he's ready to forget about Pepper. Ringo agrees with them. Says the White Album is them being a band again, which he loves. The band's collaborative process starts breaking down as individual visions start to dominate. Revolution sparks a bit of a problem. That song was originally slow, and it was on the White Album. We've covered that here on the show before, but the other 3 guys thought it needed to rock and it needed to be faster, so they juiced it up. John wasn't crazy about that, but he did it.
Yeah, there's 2 interesting notes, I think, at the end of this episode in the way that they talk about wanting to move on from Sergeant Pepper. Again, Sergeant Pepper is a big Paul idea. It's one of his big babies creatively, and the success of it. There's no getting around it. The success of Sergeant Pepper, I think, emboldened Paul to want to take more of a stance creatively in the group. Um, and when you see how those guys talk about Pepper, it was a big success for them. But like even when George talked about it and how he was like, I wasn't that fond of making that album because I didn't have much to do. I just came in and played what they asked me to play, but I didn't have much to add to it creatively. Um, and so when you see the other 2 also say we felt more like a band making this album, it's because it felt more collaborative. And then also these are some of George's best contributions to an album. And you could see it. You could see where he is creatively. You could see where they are individually creatively. And I think that's I I don't want to make it seem like it's all Paul's fault. I just think that Paul was going in a certain direction creatively and everybody else was going. And I you can see it more in episode 8 where they talk about well, I guess we'll get to it, but you could see it started to turn more into 3 versus 1.
It did. Oh my God, it so did. And to your point, I will say the words, it seemed to happen overnight, but it did not seem to happen overnight,
No.
Phil. This was a long time coming.
No, you could see the makings of it early in the anthology with Paul. You could see some stuff with George where George was getting sick of like like I said, the song and dance of being a Beatle and having to be in this band and having to make appearances. But also, he wanted to do other things creatively, and I think he felt stifled by it by the end.
Yeah. Yeah, and John is giving us a warning, kids. Episode 7 ends with John describing these sessions for the White Album as the disintegration of the band. And Ringo agreed and called it a divorce, that the divorce doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while. And that's how we end episode 7, which leads us to the final part, kids. This is going into 68, 69, and then ultimately to the end of the band. This chronicles the final phase of the Beatles' career, beginning with the completion of the White Album, moving through Get Back, Let It Be, Abbey Road, concluding with the band's breakup. We kick off this episode with Hey Jude, and we mentioned it already. I mean, it's just, I don't know, Phil. Part of me is like, you see this, and I use the words real time, but you know what I mean. You see this playing out in real time as you're watching the documentary, and you're like, how do these guys split up?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Look how great they look and how great they sound and how phenomenal this freaking song is. And then a year after this, a year and a half after this, it's over. Like, man,
Yeah. Yeah, I love Hey Jude. Love the video for Hey Jude. I love
love it.
when it gets to the chant at the end and uh the audience is on stage with them at that point. I love it. Such a great video.
They bum rush Paul. I think he's going to fall out of his chair. So good. Yeah. It's like they're all crammed in. Ringo's up there smiling and stuff, and everybody's kind of cramped around him. So good, man. And is George playing bass? I think George is playing bass here. Or is he? John's on guitar, I think. No, George is on guitar. All right. Yeah, that's great video. John's getting people to do the chant with him and stuff. Man, again, how in the world did this band break up? I just see this clip and I'm like, my God, what the frick happened, man? Well, kids, the end is near because we're going from this to the idea of the Let It Be album. And as we said earlier, this was Paul's, I guess we can say it was Paul's brainchild. Twickenham
Yes.
Film Studios, which was described as cold and dark and depressing, and nobody wanted to go for a while. And they first got there January of '69. So, they've got this calendar year, and then by 1970, Let It Be comes out, and that's going to be the end of it. But the sessions are tense, they're isolated, they're often individual. And again, Phil, we've got Yoko in up like every shot, and her presence is discussed openly among band members. And then we get the bit about what we were talking about earlier about Ringo leaving the band. I just, again, like, we know the story, we know how everything ends, but when you're watching this play out, you're like, wait a minute, they're splitting up?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
I think, like I said earlier, how you can fill the gaps at certain spots with other things we've seen. They show this part later in a very loving way where Yoko and John are waltzing in there in that studio, and they don't show that they're doing it mockingly while George is trying to play what becomes "I Me Mine," and
Mhm.
he's like, "Man, this is a rock band, son. We don't play that music here." And it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh.
That I think that's kind of the unfair thing to Paul as well, because because we've seen that clip of them arguing so many times that it makes it seem like, oh, George just had this tiff with Paul, and that was the thing that made him leave. That's not entirely true. I think that he was frustrated overall with the experience. Cameras in his face, and then stuff with John. John also is bringing Yoko to these rehearsals. None of these other guys are bringing their spouses or anybody else to these things. And yeah, I want to be heard. I want to be heard. And, I took the time to write this song. I don't want to be made fun of.
Of course, yeah. George has earned the right to do this, and I'm sure there was some good-natured ribbing among the four of them. I mean, but there
Yeah.
comes a point where, Phil, it's no longer good-natured. It's like, I'm starting to take this personal, you know?
Yeah. It's like, yeah. So I think that there were a lot of factors to it. When they do get to the part from Let It Be where George leaves, and they kind of tell the story differently in the anthology. George gives that take of, yeah, I was told there was a meeting and then I came to the meeting and it was really, you know, what's best for us is to just finish this album and keep going as a band.
Mhm.
And it doesn't sound as nice or intimate as the story we get in Let It Be, where they all came and they said their piece and then they got back to the studio. It felt very much like, again, the business of the Beatles means that we got to knock this album out.
Yeah. Yeah, they're businessmen at that point. That's what it kinda all circled back to, unfortunately. They eventually get out of Twickenham, kids. If you know the story about the Let It Be sessions, they do get out of Twickenham. It's a good thing, because they go back to Savile Row and to Apple Studios, and they're recording there. The Magic Alex thing happens in the midst of all this, which is utterly ridiculous. And we see George doing his bit with the acoustic and little furry boots, which I always love that bit. And then John sitting there playing slide. It's just such a fun little clip, man.
Yeah, all the stuff from Let It Be. And we get Billy Preston showing up, and the story we've heard multiple times now that everybody was on their best behavior when somebody else was there,
Yep.
and Billy Preston really mellowed out the recording sessions. I have never heard the clip of Paul saying, "Yeah, but there was this thought in the back of our minds, like, is he going to be a member of this group?" And I never okayed that. And it's just like, oh no, where did that come from? Why would you think that? But again, that's why I'm like, you could tell at multiple times. Paul's over here. Everybody else is heading in a different direction.
I'm going to be straight with you. Remember how in the episode Paul mentioned doing LSD, and the rest of the band's like, really? All right. I mean, I don't know that anyone mentioned Billy Preston being a fifth Beatle besides maybe the press.
Yeah, that's where I was like, where did that come from?
I don't know. Oh,
yeah, I think that was Paul feeling that way in some ways. Like,
yeah.
and I think that one of the best quotes, I think it's from episode 8, where John is saying, yeah, all of this stuff is happening because we spent so much time with each other. We started blaming each other, and we started like picking at each other. And I think some of that stuff with Billy might not been that he really thought that he was gonna become a fifth member, but it's like, oh, so now somebody else is in the mix because Yoko is here. It's like, now it's this, and now another person's in the room, and that's not what this was.
Yeah, it's just such an odd thing.
Yeah.
It's such an odd thing, man. Kids, I don't want to gloss over this episode. I don't want to move through it too fast because we cannot put over enough like how big the sessions were. For what eventually became the Get Back documentary, of course, where eventually became Let It Be album. We have covered it here on the podcast before, as we said before. And we'd go into a lot more detail than we're going to do here today, but I think it's worth your time. So please go check out those episodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all there.
I mean, they get into more detail and Get Back with those sessions and just like everything around that time period. They kind of really speed through this time period in episode 8, and move into like the Abbey Road stuff.
Yeah, everything happens fairly quickly here. But I guess that's how it went. I guess that's how it went in real time, right? Things happen kind of fairly quickly here, I imagine.
Yeah, a lot of stuff you could see, like even when they're talking about bringing in the new manager, like, and we've heard this story, of course, multiple times as well, and how Klein came and met with John, and John was like, "Yeah, I think we should go with him," and Paul's like, "Yeah, I didn't agree with that," and then everybody eventually sides with John, and Paul's the only one like, "Yeah, I didn't agree with that." Again, a quote from Paul that I'd never heard. I did not know that he initially wanted Linda's dad to come in as their lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been interesting.
And then he kind of quite quickly tried to self-correct and go, well, they told me that, that wouldn't have worked because, it would have been, of course, a bias in my favor. And I'd be like, I was sitting there like, yeah, you think this is your wife's, this is your father-in-law. Like, yeah, I don't think that would work. But the fact that he was just kind of like, yeah, everybody disagreed. I had already had this idea of bringing in Mr. Eastman, and then everybody agreed with Klein, and now it's 3 versus 1, and that's not how we did things. It was supposed to be like, if we don't all agree on things, then we just don't do it. And the 3 of them agreed on things, and I was the only one that was kind of like, no, I don't want to do that. And it's like, yeah, but look at why you didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, of course they're not going to agree with you bringing in your father-in-law as like representation when you've got a manager that at that point, has a career to back up why they would want him. He's worked with other big acts.
Yeah. He has, but at the same time, in terms of what Alan Klein did, I mean, there's going to be haters and there's going to be sort of on all sides of this. And in terms of what he did with the Beatles, in 1964, this going back to the very beginning of the band, Klein actually approached Epstein with an offer for the Beatles to sign with RCA for $2 million, and Epstein was not interested. That's going all the way back.
Mm-hmm.
And so then after Epstein died in 1967, the group formed Apple Corps, as we know. And this is where Klein sort of gets back in. He contacts John after reading his press comment that Beatles would be broke in 6 months if things continued as they were. So on January 26, 1969, he met with John, who retained Klein as a financial representative, and the next day met with the other Beatles. Didn't meet with them together. That's the problem.
Yeah. And of course, yeah. That context is important too. I don't want to make it seem like it was just that Paul wanted to bring in his choice.
Sure.
It was that he felt like John had already made the decision without him, and then everybody else then went and sided with John, and he was just like, well, wait a minute, that's not how we do things.
Yeah, once Klein got in power, and he did get in power, kids, he fired a lot of the employees, including the president of the company, and replaced these people with his own people. He closed Apple Electronics, which means Magic Alex was out of a job. So, Magic Alex, we hardly knew you. And
yeah, and I don't know that Klein was a good fit. I just think it was just another one of those things where John was heading his way, and Paul was like, well, wait a minute, let's think about this. And John was like, well, why?
Exactly. Yeah, right. Well, I don't believe Klein was a good fit. If for no other reason, he tried to fire Neil Aspinall, and the band had to veto that. Like, Neil is as important to them during this time as Epstein was, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, this entire documentary, this would not be made without his work. Without the work that they talked about in episode 9 of him keeping all the footage and being really the driving force behind putting it out.
Yeah, things kind of go progressively downhill from here, kids. And it eventually led to the end for everybody.
Yeah.
Not just him.
Yeah, and I mean, again, the way that this anthology tries to put things in a positive light, like they show Paul's wedding to Linda, and they show all this stuff with John and Yoko and them getting married. And, it's really painted as a way of like, yeah, these two like matured and they found the women they want to spend their lives with. And that's part of like what led to the schism between them and, the split of this group. But yeah, I just think it was just a bunch of other outside influences. And it's just like, there's no way it wasn't like, well, why are you doing this? Like, you're married at this,
Sure.
You're at home and you have to explain, all right, well, I'm frustrated with this. Your wife's going to be like, well, why are you doing that? Like, why don't you tell him, I don't want to do this? Or
of course,
why don't you put your foot down? And I feel like that's what started happening more and more.
Yeah. Oh, listen, kids, not just women, men do it too, I'm sure.
Of course.
The spouse always gets their 2 cents in, even if it's not in front of the other people, always.
Of course. And you think that wasn't happening? Like, Paul was going home and Yoko was at the at the rehearsals, at the recording session, and he's at home like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. And she's probably just like, well, why don't you tell John you don't want her there?
Yeah, exactly.
Or why don't you tell John you don't want to go with Klein? I thought we were going with my dad, or whatever else, else it was. And again, I don't want to paint that as Linda with a negative influence. I just think that these things inevitably happen once you start meeting people and you start getting in new friend groups, or you get married, or you start spending a lot of time with anybody else other than the 4 guys that you spent the last decade with.
Yeah, and it goes downhill from here. By the way, Phil, mentioning how they were trying to paint everything in a positive light, didn't even mention Phil Spector here at all, did they?
No, I thought that was interesting as well. Especially in episode 9, they don't talk about Phil Spector here at all.
Not at all. No.
And Phil Spector is very, very big in like the making of Abbey Road, the making of George's first solo album. He was a big part of like John's solo.
Let It Be,
career.
You mean? Let It Be.
Yeah, Let It Be. But he was a big part of George's solo career. At least his first album, he was a big part of John's solo career. So yeah, not mentioning Phil Spector here was a big was a big omission. Understandably, why they also wouldn't want to do that, given where Phil Spector is currently. But
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Kids, if you've been following along, go back and if in your mental Rolodex there, Tom mentioned in the first episode of this series we're doing here that he encouraged you to go watch the actual Beatles anthology as it was originally recorded and edited because they do mention Phil Spector. There's things that's left out for
oh,
the Disney cut.
they
And
took him out.
yeah, dude.
Oh,
I cannot remember to what extent he was mentioned, but I'm 99% sure he was mentioned.
yeah.
I've
'Cause
intentionally not watched. I'm trying to keep my head straight on what we're reviewing. So
Because that's a big omission. If you because he did a lot of production and he was a big part of like the change in sound that Paul did not like on certain
mhm.
things.
Yep.
And of course, like I said, John worked extensively with Phil at one point. There's stories with him working with George, and George wasn't happy with certain things.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, yeah,
I mean, look, kids, when Paul McCartney's not happy with your arrangement, there's a problem
yeah,
because Paul didn't just start doing this yesterday. And Let It Be Naked is such a better album than Let It Be. It is light years better than Let It Be. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, that stripped down version. It's got like the 3D like film effect on the cover. It's such a better version of that album, man.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the story mostly that he was not happy at all with what he did to Long and Winding Road?
No.
Um, yeah,
The version that's on Let It Be Naked, Billy Preston's on keyboards. It sounds great. It's very tame and it's very stripped down, but it's fine. It feels like you're in the studio hanging out with them and they're playing, and it's not overproduced as was that crap that they released to the public. And we all grew up with that version. I get it. The version that was on the actual album, I did too. But I didn't realize how overproduced it was till I heard it stripped down.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it might be one of those things where I've heard artists say that they don't like to get in interviews and say, "Oh, well, I ended up not liking that song," or "That's my least favorite song on the album," because then it'll influence the audience, and they'll be like, "Well, wait a minute, now I notice what he's saying about the song. I
mhm,
don't like it either."
that's very true. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1 800 519 5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. Well, kids, things are not looking good for the band, our heroes. They do decide to go back in the studio after Let It Be sessions kind of fall apart. And what kills me, and George Martin has stuck to this story for years, the story that Paul calls him up and says, we want to do another album. And I don't know that he said we want to do the last album, but he says we want to do another album. Would you like to produce it for us? Now, I'm going to hope that George's memory is fuzzy on that, because if Paul McCartney asked him if he wanted to produce it, like, who else are you going to get to produce this album? What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Again, Paul being Paul. That clip of Paul from the Let It Be sessions where he's talking about, yeah, I had this idea where they had like a ongoing news, and then at the end they just say we broke up, and everybody's just like, but that's horrible. And he was like, yeah, I guess it is. And it's just like, hmm, hmm, why'd you do that?
Right.
Why'd you say that? And I'm telling you, of course I can't just I can't accuse him of anything, but I really feel like he was getting more and more to a point where he was just like, I'm ready to move on.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, again, genius. He is a genius. But I think at some point it becomes I can do this better with my own band and musicians who I'm not having to wait on, and I'm directing the traffic and they're listening to me. And
Yeah. And I don't
yeah,
even think he's wrong. That's the thing about it. I don't think Paul is wrong for wanting to move on. Just like I don't think George was wrong for feeling like this is getting too restrictive. I want to do something else.
Mhm. I
Um,
agree.
and I mean, to a degree with John, I think, the thing that John seemed to like about Yoko Ono is that she wasn't like these four guys that I spend all my time with. We went from doing rock and roll at a time where rock and roll was edgy and it wasn't mainstream, and we became this big mainstream pop act. We became one of the biggest bands in the world, and it didn't feel like we were doing anything that edgy or new anymore.
Mhm.
And I think that that's what he started to cling to with Yoko. And I guess cling has a negative connotation to it. I don't mean it that way, but
Mhm.
I think that that's what he saw in her. That like, oh, she's doing something avant-garde and new and refreshing. Like that album cover that they put out where they're both naked, and Ringo's like, oh, you got the times in there, like.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's very much a John move as well. Like,
Yeah, because I think he wanted to dare to be different, and you
yeah,
saw that throughout his career with the Beatles and as a solo artist. And I think by the end you could see that's why he wasn't long for this band anymore. That he just, you know, it had gotten too big. He wanted to do something else.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, well, they do get back together, kids, to record Abbey Road, and George's only caveat was George Martin that they do it the way they used to, and they did. By all rights, by what we know anyway, the Abbey Road sessions went well. Everybody worked together. It was a band again. I guess maybe because they all knew, let's get through this, then we'll be on our way. And
Yeah.
I don't think Phil, any one of them ever said this is the last album. It's just that Paul in 1970 puts out a press release and it's like, well, I'm
Mhm.
done.
Yeah.
What? Like,
Yeah.
this is how we find out?
Yeah. The fact that he wanted to be the first one to say it, and just the way he did it was very interesting. Again, he gets a bad rep for a lot of things he's did, and
Mhm.
that's one of the things that's hard to defend him on. Um, but I think he had really started to see the writing on the wall by the time Abbey Road came about. I think that he talked a lot about in the making of this, especially here in episode 8, about how, yeah, we didn't treat it like our last album, but we put a lot of effort into it,
Mhm.
like it was our last album. And he was like, there was no negativity, there was no sniping. All the songs were about love and peace and understanding, like we were doing. And I was like, yeah, even when you just with that quote, with the context of he was the first to put that press release out, it comes off away.
Yeah, yeah, it did. I mean, things did not end the way they should have ended, in my
No,
opinion. There's a better way to
no.
do it.
And of course, that's not covered at all here. They just gloss over all of that.
Yeah, they just skip it.
Which I can understand why. It's a very awkward situation with like the legal situations that came afterwards, some of the personal things being said back and forth by these guys.
Yeah.
It got very ugly.
Yeah, and then we get near the end Paul's quote that I mentioned, I think in the last episode, I believe it was, where he's like, the message wasn't telling the kids to go, leave your parents, tell them to go to hell or whatever, and but all they did was all you need is love. John came up with give peace a chance. He's like, there's always a good spirit. I can't argue with him. Like, there's a good
He's right.
spirit behind the band. There really is.
I think he's right about the overall themes of Abbey Road and why Abbey Road is overall such a beautiful album, especially the last stretch of the album. It's ended up being very good, but also there's something to be said about how the final stretch of that album is a lot of Paul ideas, and how you could see how the others were straying more and more away from wanting to do his ideas.
Yeah.
And I don't even think his ideas were bad or that he executed them poorly. I just think that, again, everybody was going in separate directions. Everybody wanted to do different things.
They did. They did for sure. And it's very evident. This episode, kids, wraps up with the four of them in the grass. It's their final photo session as a band, and the end is playing from Abbey Road. It's a very fitting ending. But can I tell you something? I kind of felt like the end falls flat. It fell flat for me. It kind of went out on a whimper. Did you get that, or did you feel like everything was I mean, not mentioning the stuff that they obviously left out, but I don't know. I maybe expected a bigger, grander ending for this, the way it was edited.
I think it's because we both know that there's a lot missing here, and they're trying to paint a happy ending on it for episode 8, and it didn't really work.
Yeah. Well, kids, there you have it. There's episode 7 and 8. We don't want to get out of here without doing 9. We're going to touch on it. We don't want to do a separate episode, although we could because there's a lot of stuff here, man. But
Yeah.
basically, in 1991, 21 years after the Beatles broke up, the 3 remaining band members embark on the anthology project. All the footage that you guys watched during the anthology was not recorded at the same time. That explains how the guys are younger and then older and then younger than older. There's haircuts, there's facial hair, there's different clothes. The lighting is different. Nothing's consistent anywhere. Paul's on a boat and by a campfire.
Paul's change of scenery in a lot of those interviews is very funny to me every time, bro. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Like, he's on a boat, he's by some water one time, then he's by that campfire. Like, what's going on?
So good. I love that episode 9 kicks off with Ringo and Paul's playing drums behind him. And Ringo just turns around and he's like, are you rolling? Then he turns around and catches Paul playing. And he's like, what have I told you? And Paul just starts pretending like he's crying. And Ringo just turns back around and says, buggers, you can't keep him off.
Yeah.
And then he says hi. It's such a great little comic bit, man.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of seems like all of the stuff that they're filming on the grass where like they're outside and playing ukulele, I'm assuming that's filmed at George's house.
I think it's at George's house. Yes, I believe so.
Because it seems like it. It seems like George made the decision to host it. Maybe George. This is another thing I got from his the Scorsese documentary. He was very big into ukuleles at one point, and so yeah, there's a Tom Petty story in there where he's like he wanted to teach him how to play ukulele, and he was like, "Yeah, I got some more in the car." And he goes outside and he opens his trunk and he's got a bunch of them in there.
That's so great.
Yeah, big into ukulele. So was not surprised that he's when they're on the grass and he's got the ukulele that he's playing.
It's such a great little because Zeppelin used a ukulele on oh God, what song was it?
Yeah, it has a great sound to it.
I'm not gonna say I can't remember the name of the song, it's killing me. But yeah, they used it. Yeah, I love the sound. It's got a very unique sound. I don't know if I could listen to it on every track I listen to, but
No.
I like it. This episode dives very quickly, kids, into what becomes the sessions for Free as a Bird, for Real Love, and then the other tune that we mentioned that they released, I think it was last year, maybe it was 2024. But in May of 95, after 4 years of recording clips and getting interviews, the 3 of these guys met up at Abbey Road, and that's where we meet them. We join them in the dock. They bring their kids, which I thought was a nice touch, Phil. It made it feel more like a family environment versus just the 3 of them. I actually really like that part of this.
Yeah, I think that that's also what made some of the John stuff sad in that they had gotten to a point where these guys all are married with families and they have relationships. And, the first guy, that really introduced his significant other into the mix in a very controversial way, he didn't get a chance to have that moment with them of bringing his family around and bringing, Yoko around at this point. And he just didn't get the closure that I felt like he deserved for a lot of things that happened towards the end of that band, a lot of things that happened between him and Paul. And George mentions it at one point where he's just like, I feel bad for him because he didn't get this, and he definitely deserved that.
He deserved it, and I think it would have been cool to have seen Julian with him, and I think
Yeah,
because I think Julian finally made peace with everything. It seems like he did.
yeah, and he's got other children at that point that,
Sure.
yeah, it was just sad that he didn't get closure up to that point with where the band ended up and where their personal relationships ended up.
It was cool to watch this. Can I be honest with you? I think I enjoyed part 9 better than I did part 8. I just feel like it's more, even though we're missing John, It just feels better. It just doesn't feel like such a downer that part 8 does to me.
I think what it was for me is episode 9 felt more honest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It just felt like there was so much they intentionally left out of episode 8. And
Mhm.
it's like they try to go about, like, look, yeah, there was tension, there was all these ugly things that happened, you know, these things boiled over, but they didn't really get into it. And I think I preferred, at least in episode 9, where you do see things where they had mended things, and it does feel like they're like genuinely happy to be around each other again, and like all of these things feel like sincere. And I don't think everything in episode 8 felt sincere.
I agree. Yeah. The other song I was trying to mention, kids, was Now and Then, which was the song that was put out. I want to say it was, let's see. Yeah, 2023 is how long that song's been out. Phil, take the time to watch that. They clipped together a weird CG video of John and put him next to get to the
Oh,
band. And dude, it's very I saw
no,
people, I know people who are like, this is the best thing ever.
I
Did you
did
see
too.
it, Tom? Did you see it? And I'm like,
Uh,
I didn't like this. I
oh,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah, I had never heard that story that George tells about wanting to have Elvis in the Wilburys as well,
Yep, yep.
and that's what led to Paul, and then Paul again. Paul is hilarious, bro. Paul telling a story about how he had to be the messenger, he had to be the guy that goes and talks to Yoko and get the tapes, and it's like
I mean,
it has a context. It has like this. He might not mean it that way, but how it sounds.
and plus there's controversy about that too. Like he
Yeah.
played nice with her just to get the tapes, and then the way he makes it sound is not the way it played out and all this other
Yes.
stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, dude.
Paul. Yeah, because of course, like they had Paul and Yoko had like very public things said back and forth between them after John was gone as well. And, just where John Estates ended up, and, just like the messy stuff around that. Yeah. Yeah, I very much chuckled at that part when he's like, "Yeah, and I had to be the messenger that went and talked to Yoko."
Yeah, it was yeah. But in Paul's stories, Paul usually looks pretty good.
Always, he always makes himself look good, and I mean, he does at least say, all these things are a matter of perspective, and he's right. I think from
Sure.
his perspective, he might not have seen it this way, and I think that that's his way of trying to make a polite compromise with everybody else, where he might not have meant anything by certain things he said and did, but other people saw it that way. Or,
Yeah.
George being very blunt in a situation, he might not have felt like he was wrong or anything, but that's just how I felt in the moment.
Well, let me ask you, coming from two guys who were not members of the Beatles, what is your take on this? Let's take John's old recordings, and even though Yoko said yes, even though the family said yes, even though the fans wanted to hear it, do you have a personal opinion on this? Do you think, just leave it alone, or do you like the thoughts of it? Maybe not the execution. Where do you stand on this?
I think because they wanted to do something specifically for the anthology, so that John was there in spirit. I really like the idea behind it. I think if they were trying to like make an album and like make a real go of selling something, that would be
Mhm.
different. And they all talked about not wanting to tour because they can't tour. Like, Ringo was saying, if we tour again, it's Ringo, uh, Paul, and George, but we're not the Beatles. We're not the Beatles without John. And I think
Mhm.
that they all very much feel the same way. Like we're not a full band without him. And if we're gonna put out any material, I don't want to put out material without him. And I think that it felt like it was more of the case that they didn't want to leave John out if they recorded something new than just trying to take some John footage and doctor it up just for the sake of. I think
Right.
like if the three of them got in there, recorded something for the anthology, they wouldn't have considered it a Beatles song without John.
Well, I mean, we've seen footage of Paul doing. I think it's "I've Got a Feeling" on stage,
Yes.
and they put John on the big screen behind him, and he sings with him in real time. Like this guy was his brother. Like I don't know how I can get my stupid feelings hurt by that because I didn't know John.
Yeah.
And these guys were basically blood brothers at one point. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't think that they were doing if they were doing it in this commercial way of like trying to put out this new Beatles album, I think that would have been a bad idea. It would have came off kind of patronizing.
Mm.
Um, but this didn't come off that way. It just felt like a labor of love thing where they just didn't want to do it without him. And I think
Yeah.
this was their way of at least including him in some way. And some of the stuff was really emotional when they were talking about like having to record this stuff and like hearing his vocals back and he wasn't there, or only hearing him through the cans. And yeah, I imagine it had to be tough working together again and he wasn't there.
Yeah, and Paul's like, we had to kind of tell ourselves he was on a holiday, and he asked us to work on the tracks, and I'm like, whatever helps, whatever gets you through the night, so to speak.
Mm.
But whatever gets you there. I do also like what Paul said when he talked about the idea of them getting on the stage and doing the music again. He said, I don't really think the three of us are interested in going out and playing together because there'd be a huge hole in the stage. And he's like, you can't fill it.
Yeah.
And then they had to follow it up with something funny because George is like, Paul and I are going to play some stadiums next year. And Paul says mud wrestling together, which popped Ringo and George. And Ringo's like, I'm going to be the referee. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, George is just the way George dresses now, everything about him in the 90s. He's just like he couldn't
Right.
wait. He couldn't wait to not be in a band anymore and just be who he really wants to be. That's what
Yeah.
I think every time I see that footage of him. Like he's got like his plaid shirts, he's got like his shirts with like all the little wolves and stuff on it. I'm like, man, this guy could not wait to just be on his big house with like all of this space and basically be a farmer. He did not want to be famous.
No, Paul and Ringo have blazers on. They're at least trying to look the
Bro,
part.
there's a bit where they're all sitting together and Paul is wearing a pair of Nikes. He's got like the whole great outfit. And George is like, yeah, you're getting this vest with this t-shirt under.
Oh, it's so great, man. Well, look, kids, part 9 is very, very much worth your time. And Phil, forgive me if I don't remember what we said, because I don't honestly remember what we said. I made my feelings known on Free as a Bird and Real Love. I just don't think they sound good. And it's no disrespect. I think they did the best they could. Bringing on Jeff Lynne was a choice.
Yeah.
And I like Jeff. I like ELO. But I don't know that it was the right choice, if I'm being honest. But I didn't see anyone else rushing to go through all those cassette tapes of John's recording. So I guess it is what it is.
Yeah.
But
I still haven't listened to them, to be honest. I don't know.
yeah, it's tough. I mean, listen, you absolutely should listen to them. But John's voice on Real Love, dude, it's like, I'm going to use the word ghost, but I don't mean it that, in that sense. It's ghostly. Like the way it comes in, you're like, okay, this wasn't recorded when this music was recorded. It's just, I don't know. I feel like you could do this on your iPhone now and it would sound great, but they just didn't have that technology in 95 to make it sound crisp. They're not bad songs. Let's just make that clear. And also, the songs were out in the ether. They were out there. It's not like they'd never been heard. Real Love was out there. It's just, Yoko had the master tapes and they gave them to the guys, and the guys took them and did what they did with them. And later on, they did the same thing with Now and Then in 2023. So yeah, it's very, very different. Seeing them in the studio and recording and everything in episode 9. And after the totality of everything we talked about, I mean, you and I are huge fans, and we're not done talking about the Beatles. I'm sure there's a lot more we haven't covered yet on this podcast. Phil, what do you say to people who don't get it? Because with any big band or any big singer, there's always a segment of people that are trying to downplay what they did.
Yeah.
If you could say anything to haters, I mean, what could you say? Could you tell them, hey, look at the anthology and shut the F up? I mean, what would be your message to people who just don't get this?
I think, unfortunately, because the Beatles became as big as they were, and the hype around the Beatles got to where it is, that some people don't just see this as it's just music, and it's just a bunch of guys playing music that is subjective. And I have a hard time because I'm a fan of these guys and I enjoy their music. I have a hard time not enjoying like them just like having those jam sessions or like even the stuff for the songs that they made, even though I haven't heard the songs, it was just so good to see them having fun recording again.
Yeah.
And like just the bits where they were doing like the melodies and stuff and how it just they just went right back to what they did best because they did it for so long. And he had that bit where they came back in after they recorded the melodies, and Ringo's like, "Sounds like the Beatles."
Right? So good. Yeah. He said I was able to distance myself from us as a band and just say it sounds like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's to the same point I'm trying to make of I think it's probably the same thing for them where this thing got so big and all consuming that it's kind of hard to look back on it and go, "Oh, wait a minute, we did a lot of really cool things. We made a lot of great music and it wasn't just like, you know, the big business around it and just like the big image that we created for ourselves."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, kids, let me tell you this. I'll draw my line in the sand right here. As Phil said, it's very subjective. Art is subjective. If anybody tells me I don't like the band, I don't like their music, I don't get it. But they changed the world. Cool.
Yeah.
But when you tell me they didn't do that, they didn't have an impact, and they didn't, yeah, well, you're dead wrong, and you're dumb, and it's a dumb take. Sorry, it's a dumb take. And if you're ignorant and you're not aware, you get a pass. But go research it. Don't
Yeah.
take one podcaster's word for it or two. Go research it. Go find out why people of every color, of every gender, of every race, creed, background, type of music, verbal and nonverbal alike, praise this band. This is not an accident, Phil. This is not some kind of weird syndrome. This is not some kind of weird drug that everybody took to love the Beatles. There's a reason why people from all walks of life praise this band as maybe the greatest to ever do it, Phil. There's a reason for that, man.
Yeah, there's a I guess this is kind of relevant because there's that quote from Sean recently where he was saying how he feels like the Beatles music is being forgotten. And yeah, some of the reactions to it online have been very bizarre. But I think it's just, time has a way of rewriting history for a lot of people.
Mm.
And yeah, I don't really get it. There were some takes in response to that article that I read and I was just like, yeah, I just don't want to argue with people, man. I If you don't really get the Beatles impact, um, you're wrong. And it's just an uninformed take. It's not one of those
Sure.
things where it's just like because everybody's welcome to their opinion. If you just don't like their music, if you were never into them as a group, sure. But
Mm.
when people are then taking like all of these groups that they like and going, "Oh, well, this group was always better than them." Yeah, but that's not really the point here. Like, it doesn't matter if you think this band was better. Uh, the Beatles undeniably had a massive impact on rock music, on popular music. That just
Mhm.
there's no debate.
There is no debate. Zero. I'm not having it. I don't like them. It's fine. Like, I think it's weird, but it's whatever. But to intentionally say they're not who we've been told they are, you are wrong. That's it. That's like saying the sky wasn't blue today, guys. Yeah, I can look up and see it is. Don't lie to me. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
yeah. I do think also one of the best things about episode 9 is when they get into those small stories with like how they came up with their look. Like I don't know that I had ever heard the story about like where John and Paul went, and that's when they first got the haircuts, and or the story about the store they went to that eventually started making their boots.
Yeah, I'd never heard the boot story. That was not in the original anthology.
Yeah,
They added that in. Yeah. The boot story I didn't know. I didn't know the hair story because a lot of their fashion came from Astrid.
yeah,
The haircuts came from Astrid because that was the artsy crowd that John hung out with. That's where a lot of their stuff came from. That's where Stuart Sutcliffe came from. So, yeah. There's some great stuff in episode 9, man. I mean, I don't want to gloss over it like it didn't happen. There's some great stuff here. I mean, like you said, seeing them in the studio together after all that time enjoying each other's company. There's a few moments of George, feeling like, yeah, are we done? What time is it? I want some dinner. Like it kind of feels that way,
Time to go
but
to bed yet?
right. But there's a lot of moments when it feels like it's okay that he's into it,
Yeah, but I think it's because we're going from episode 1, and you see this guy go from this very, brash young guy initially, and by episode 9, he's an old man, and he
Mhm.
acts very much like an old man. It's so
He
funny.
does.
He acts more like an old man than the other 2, and it is so funny to me because he's just kinda like, "Yeah, alright, cool. Well, are we done?"
Yeah, it's kids, we know the story has a sad ending, but the legacy is amazing. I mean, we lost George in 2001. It has been that long since he's been gone,
Yeah.
which is crazy. John, of course, in 1980. I mean, half the band is gone. And when Zeppelin did Celebration several years back, which, by the way, Phil, great concert footage, great concert, great album. And they had Jason Bonham on drums, and it's fantastic. They hadn't aged a day. They look great. They sounded great. The concert is effing amazing. The Who continued on after Keith Moon died. They replaced him with whoever they replaced him with. They kept going. The Stones have continued. They've lost band members over the years. I kind of really like that we never got the 3 of these guys on stage as a band with a 4th member. I kind of like that it never happened.
Yeah.
Is there a part of you that would like to have seen it happen maybe for just one concert? I mean, what do you think about that?
No, I know that they've done performances together. They've done things here and there, but um, I think despite like how messy it got, and I think it's very important that they continue to say throughout this anthology, we were friends first,
Yeah.
and I just think they all look at it the same way. Like I don't want to do that without John. Like if John is not here, then this band is not a thing anymore. Like we're not Beatles without him.
Yeah. Kids, there you have it. There is essentially episodes 7 through 9. We have wrapped up the Beatles anthology. As you can see, we're below 2 hours. We could have went probably 4 and still maybe not covered everything. But as we warned you guys from the beginning, this was just going to be a quick review snapshot and our general overall feelings on these episodes. And the more we talk about the Beatles in the show, the more we'll come back and circle around again and mention some stuff. And every time you think you know some things about this band, Phil, there'll be stuff that comes out. There'll be a new book. There'll be a new set of photographs. There'll be a new recording from somewhere that somebody uncovered. And then,
Yeah.
some stuff we hope stays buried, like Carnival of Lights. Hopefully that'll never see the light of day. If you know anything about that, that's one of those you hope you never hear it. So, yeah, we'll see. As long as the fans want it, kids, there will be something happening. And hopefully the estates of these men, as well as Paul and Ringo, will continue to give us at least some remastered, some more box sets, and continue to keep the music coming because that's what we want as fans. Phil, before we wrap this up, let's get your last word on 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah, I think that the anthology on the whole is a really good watch. Um, I do think that there's some things in this episode 7 and 8 that are very tough to watch, but I think on the whole it's a very good documentary. There's some stuff that is a little sugary. They glossed over a bit. Um, but
Yes.
man, episode 9 made it all worth it. I think episode 9 is kind of an epilogue for the entire thing. I thought was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Episode 9 makes it worth it. I mean, the whole thing's worth watching. Kids, again, please, for the final time, let me encourage everybody here to please go watch the original anthology. Okay. Then, if you want to watch the Disney version, you can. There is some stuff they put in the Disney version. It's not in the original version, but I would greatly encourage you to watch the original version and then come back and watch this. And that way you get a full perspective of everything. And seeing these guys together in their prime was amazing when you watch the footage. Seeing the 3 of them together after the fact is pretty darn cool. But yeah, as I said, kids, they're legends. And in my opinion, best band of all time. And rest in peace, John. Rest in peace, George. And of course, thank you to the 4 of these guys for giving us what they gave us in the short time they gave it to us. A lot of bands lasted a lot longer, And some bands didn't last as long, but to do the body of work that this band did in the short amount of time they were together is amazing. And how I'm sorry, kids, they changed the world, and you're free to disagree with that, but you are also free to be wrong. So that's how we'll leave it, folks. Stay tuned for a lot more. We'll be covering some more Beatles content as we get there. As you guys know, we're fans, so we'll circle back around at some point. But we appreciate everybody following along on the ride. And thanks for sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. And stay tuned for a lot more. But for now, that is the Beatles Anthology, Part 7, 8, and 9. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at 6M Podcasts. We'll see you next time.